On this Wednesday, as we pass through Hump Day, making every camel happy. I saw a Twitter GIF or somebody, and some camel was jumping out in a field of green and was just excited beyond belief. You know those videos where the cows or the pigs or some animal that's been in a cage for next to forever, if not all their life. That was that kind of a joy being expressed by this camel as he was celebrating Hump Day. All right. Really kind of an in-between day across the states where we've had the rains from Beta across the deep south, from Texas, Louisiana. Now it's being drawn very quickly off to the north and east. And Teddy about to make landfall in Nova Scotia as a very, very powerful hybridized kind of storm as the energy of a tropical event being entrained into the jet stream and resulting in not quite a perfect storm-like scenario like we saw that Wahlberg movie back in the 90s, or at least the event was 92, 93, if I remember correctly. I was in Tulsa at the time. But nonetheless, the storm is of that kind of magnitude as we begin to blend the two seasons together. Tropical energy northward into the fall time at jet stream really can result in some bombs as they end up with explosive development. Looking a bit fancy, a little tie and a nice shirt. It goes a long way for dressing a dude up. All right, we'll start with that. Twitter was really strange today. I had some really sweet stories, and I don't know where they've all gone. They're just nowhere in my liked list, so I haven't figured that out yet. I had about 8 or 9 of them to go through, but only 2 are here now, and I'm seeing that some of the people I followed lost a few hundred followers this afternoon. So there's something going on in Twitter heaven, wherever the server farms are. There's something else going on. But the 2 that did survive, fascinating, as the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, uncovered and just confirmed observations from nearly 30 years ago in Greenland when a temperature plunged to minus 93.3 Fahrenheit, or it was like 59 point something below Celsius below zero. So that being certified now as the coldest ever recorded in the Northern Hemisphere. The comment from the Capital Weather Gang is that it may never happen again. And we know with cycles, these things do happen again. The question is, at what interval? How long must one wait? All right, and a subversive, this from Tom Nelson, and this kind of relates to the show coming up here in 57 minutes. Roundup of interviews or reviews and attacks on Climate Hustle 2, a documentary. Congressman calls the film dangerous. Media Matters, Morano, the most notorious denier. Amazon Prime and Twitter try to censor Climate Depot. So we're having the founder of Climate Depot, Mark Morano, on Another Perspective coming up here within the hour. And it'll be a very interesting discussion as we are on the eve of the debut of his second documentary, Climate Hustle. This one, Climate Hustle 2. All right, and the big news that was tried to link up was the fires in Australia last fall and winter for them, summer for down under, and then our West Coast fires. Lots of poor management, but yet lightning strikes, and then a little bit of arson thrown in there, and forests that are tinder dry. There are forests here in Colorado where there is far more standing dead wood than live trees. So it only stands to reason that at some point or another, that matter has got to be recycled. It either rots or it burns. That's really about the only 2 outcomes for these kind of forests, where they're just loaded with so much dead and dry fuel. And when you combine that with the dry conditions that have been placed, it's almost to be expected. So these conditions have the National Interagency Fire Center at preparedness level 5, which is the top of the scale. And we are running, like we have the last couple of days, with 30,000+ people on scene providing support and aid. 2 new large fires requiring emergency response. We've had 2 contained. And then this number has not been updated since yesterday, where we're just over 7 million fires, or 7 million acres having previously burned. And here's the drought throughout the West. We will get an updated map tomorrow. Those arrive early in the morning on Thursdays. The data cutoff is Tuesdays, so that gives the guys at the Drought Monitor Center at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln 48 hours to process, assess, and determine if any changes need to be made to this map. But if you compare just last year to this year, it is stunning how much. In fact, let's do that. Let's do this. Let's compare. Change maps, and we'll go from last year to this year. So we'll period 1 week. Let's go all the way to 12 months, and this is how we have seen the change. So portions of eastern Texas and a few smattering river basins in Kansas and parts of Florida and a few bit in western Idaho and the coastal areas of Oregon, a little bit better than a year ago, or at least since the start of the calendar year. But much of the west and the northeastern states have seen a degradation. Period calendar, let's just go 52 weeks. And it's a little more striking into Texas, where they've actually seen some improvement along the Red River Valley and throughout a good chunk of the southeast. But it is the vast western portion of the United States which has seen a serious degradation in drought conditions. And as we look to China, because they have been such a big newsmaker with flooding, and partially because I just had this slide stuck in here yesterday in this position, where the Three Gorges Dam, which is, people are a little bit nervous about that. I'll be honest, they're a little bit nervous about that massive man-made structure standing in the middle of the Yangtze River, holding back untold quantities of water from, going downstream. They're letting out as much as they possibly can. In fact, I don't believe they can let out any more than what the dam physically is capable of releasing, and it is coming out under great, great pressure and more rain. As we look through these basins which feed into the Yangtze River, all those Three Gorges Dam, all converging right there, and they are at the top of the scale, 5 to 5.5 inches, and it probably goes beyond this. We're just at the top of the scale. And this runs through 9 October. This is an additional 16 days where the let-up of the rainfall impacting those basins in China just is not going to ease. And that would have me a little bit nervous if I was downstream from there. All right, no record heats across the nation today. Some cool high temperatures where we have seen the remnants of beta. That continues tomorrow in about Chattanooga area. But then we begin to see the heat beginning to build through Thursday, through Friday. Not so much on Saturday, but Sunday, Monday, and then into Tuesday, where the heat once again reestablishes in the west, and we'll show you why that happens. Yesterday, 110 at Death Valley with 22 at Peters Sinks, Utah, and the tropical cyclones, all of those are now beginning to wind down. Beta, just a remnant depression, and then tropical cyclone Teddy, still with with strong winds, upwards of 50 miles an hour, with movement north-northeast to 31 miles an hour. So that is a very, very quick motion into the northern latitudes, and that's the good news. There's some cold air moving into New Zealand. I had a graphic from that, but that all obviously didn't survive the Twitter, because that was kind of the on the other side of the world. This is happening story. So the orange and yellow indicating dry air at the mid levels of the atmosphere. There's not a whole lot now coming off of Africa. This is a decent wave, but it would have to get somewhat closer to the coast before the NHC would begin to initiate coverage, or at least designate it as an area of investigation. And then beta now beginning to work to the north, also kind of having lost its connection to the tropics. There it is, with some strong southerly winds. And we can see the sunset terminator as sunset quickly approaches from the east as that approaches. But under these clouds, it has been a very cool fall day with some nice rainfalls. We'll look at those totals momentarily. And then some clouds, a lot of clouds. I see some trails showing up in here, right in through there. I don't know if you guys can see them over there, but undoubtedly so. We've got to see some of those trails kind of rolling on in. So that's something we can talk about on another day, how that plays out. And there's additional smoke. I'm going to update this. I'm going to go to the north. We're going to go to here, and we're going to go to infrared. And this is rain. This was another one of those Twitter stories with some nice rains from Portland on up into Seattle. So the whole Puget Sound region getting the better part of an inch and a half worth of moisture. So that is just kind of nice. Beetle kill, Karen. That is when the Mountain West is susceptible to some pine beetles. And what has kept the pine beetle, or what typically keeps the pine beetle at bay, are 5 consecutive nights with nighttime temperatures at or below 25 below Fahrenheit. And that burns them out. Heat burns and cold burns. Any temperature that comes outside of an organism's ability to withstand ends up as some kind of a burning. And that's been the deal through the West through probably 40 years, since at least the late 70s, when we had consecutively had those kind of cold Arctic outbreaks. And they largely ended after the La Nina of 82 and 83, and then waning in 84. The bitterly cold consecutive nights. We would have a flash cold where we'd have 1 or 2 nights, and then it would warm right back up. And that's just not enough to affect a cleansing of that particular beetle as it progressively moved into the northern forest, because the climate allowed them that right. So that's what fires are clearing for. Yeah, that's just kind of the cycle of life, that how it happens. Scary either way. Beetle kill wood is beautiful and should be harvested. And yes, for firewood. Yes, unfortunately, these areas are difficult to reach and harvest. And it would take a lot of aerial maneuvering, I believe, for that to happen. Because the forests are just so, I mean, it's dense, it's old growth, and that kind of thing. And so I want to take this up here. Let's drop this in on the Pacific Northwest, just to look at precip in Washington State and Oregon and see how that looks. I'm seeing some 3 inches as we get north of Vancouver. I thought I saw a 3 inch flash on the screen for just a moment in the Powell River area. Point a half inch, a little over an inch. So this is good. This at least moistens up the lower elevations and then the beds, so the needles and some of the more shallow rooted plants can at least suck up a little water. So that's good. I'm seeing also a lot of empty buckets here too. I don't know if that's just data that hasn't come in. It looks like we're just kind of running a little slow today, but the 2 inches is good. The 2/3 of an inch, the 3/4 of an inch, and in many ways, it's just the beginning. We're just in the middle part of September, so we're just in the beginning part of that. All right, temperatures. These were this morning's. This was 7 o'clock Mountain, where we can see widespread 30, so kind of a brisk start, and this is why those mountain colors are really beginning to roll into their peak 2 weeks now, if they haven't already reached their peak in the Colorado Rockies and through Wyoming. We know New England is approaching peak color. The peak color is rolling south from the northern reaches of Minnesota into Wisconsin. Lots of central Wisconsin hits their peak color in the middle of September, right at about the equinox, and we are there right now. Afternoon readings, have we warmed up much? Yes, there are those 90s. Nothing like starting a day at 40 degrees and topping out at 90, 91. What a swing, throwing a 60-degree diurnal swing. That is just immense. And cool in Canada. It's cool in Canada. And as we kind of looked at some of the longer range models earlier today, one of them brought a very aggressive cool front once again through the Rockies about 6, 7, 8, 9 October. We'll see if that's solution. But historically, with my 10 years in Colorado, that has been about the weekend where the snow falls on those higher peaks and then tends to stay. Even if it's in the shadows, that tends to stay. The heat and those sticky conditions that we've heard about all summer long with north winds aren't getting, too bad, but at least, 70 with the north wind and high dew points isn't so bad. It's just like a summer morning. So that's where the humidity is confined in the nation right now. The rain's still with the center of beta right here across Louisiana, about to head into Mississippi and Alabama through the nighttime hours. Some flash flood watches, those will probably be dropped, but it's going to take a little bit for the rivers to come down. Remember, we just had Laura not that long ago. So we're just re-wetting those places that are just sopping wet, and that's rough. Risa, my oldest granddaughter, is going to Oregon State. I believe those are the Ducks, aren't they? As a motto, not, Ducks. And so Mountain West, a few showers there. I kind of would like to go up this direction. Maybe that drops us in Idaho, Oregon. Let's just go one more, and that'll take us straight into Oregon. So, yeah, some good showers. Portland, then all up through the Cascades. And there's more coming on tonight. That's just going to be the way it runs tonight. So we'll see some of those light rains there. That's my boy Comet. Don't mind him. He's just doing what he does. He guards the house, and that keeps any of the visitors from showing up during showtime without making a ruckus. But, it doesn't excuse him. All right, 18Z. What we've been looking at is the flat ridge through the west. And so the storms have been coming into the Pacific Northwest and then racing across Canada and then kind of grabbing Teddy in this particular one. But watch how this ridge in the west it grows a big bulge. And with that, much like we saw at the beginning of September, that was able to tap some Arctic air and then plunge the cold air deep into the southern latitudes, deep through the Gulf of Mexico. And we even had YouTubers who were in Mexico saying, hey, this is cold for this time of year. And this is why. This strong high pressure arcs up to the north, and then we end up with just a deep low, then parked across the Great Lakes states and through the eastern states, even with another reinforcing surge of cool. I'm going to skip to one more map, and then we'll wind this down so I can get the show ready for Mark coming up at 6 o'clock. But this would be the snow forecast. So we would see a reintroduction of snow 7, 8, 9 October on the Colorado Rockies, and then a painting of some early season snow where the leaves are just coming off the trees as we move through Ontario and Quebec, and then out into Wyoming. This is the part that kind of concerns me. that snow in Nebraska, just because there's a lot of crops that are nowhere near ready to be harvested. They may be approaching or near maturation, but have they dried enough to then pull out of the fields? And that would be the gift of the warmth that we're going through in the next 10 days. All right, Mark Morano's coming up, and we will have an interesting talk with him about the politics behind global warming, and is there really another agenda to it? Because we know climate always changes. It's just what triggers the climate. And if we could truthfully talk about cycles in the sun versus an invisible gas that we can't get a true measurement of its effect of, maybe this climate change discussion would have gone a different way. But so what I'm really asking is what was the end result? What are they after with this whole talk? And I promise you it'll be a very fascinating discussion. And I'll see you at 6:00 Mountain to bring him on. And then Climate Hustle is his follow-up documentary to the one he released it back in 2016. So we'll go behind the scenes to the agenda that is really, really at play today. All right, guys, Scott Stevens here. We'll catch you on Another Perspective coming up then. Until then, have a great evening and keep looking up.